Hi, I'm Wendy Chung. I'm the Director of Clinical Research at Safari at the Simons Foundation, and I'm also a medical geneticist. Back in 2015, I was starting to look at genetic data from individuals that had neurodevelopmental issues. And I remember when I saw a change in CSNK2A1 over and over again. And it was at that time that I started working on the condition that's now called Okur-Chung neurodevelopmental syndrome. I want to tell you, I didn't name it after myself, but after a while, the name stuck because of the work we originally did that was then published in 2016. I remember that shortly after we made that publication, I got a call from Jennifer Sills. And Jennifer was serious about this. She really wanted to understand this condition better for her family and for the entire community. And she hopped on a plane and came to New York and sat down in my conference room with Dr. Okur and myself as we started getting to know her daughter better and also starting to plan our journey together. After that, we had our first family meeting, and I still remember in New Jersey how we brought everyone together and started learning from each other. And I know that even though we started small, this condition is much more common than the individuals we know. From that time onward, we've continued to collect information from individuals around the world with our Kur-Chung neurodevelopmental syndrome and tried to understand both the genetic changes that we see in the community, the changes we see across the life course, and the changes that we see around the world. We've learned a lot, but I have to tell you, there is still so much that we need to learn. And I have to say that I continue to be able to consult with you, Dr. Mom and Dr. Dad, as you tell me about what your child is like and as things are changing. At Simon Searchlight, we're committed to be with you every step of the way as you also go through this journey. And it's really important for every person to be represented. We know there are so many different genetic changes in this gene, and we're not sure how that differentially expresses itself in terms of the brain and behavior. And as I said, there may be differences over the life course, and it's really important for us to do everything we can to help our individuals be the most happy and well-adjusted individuals through that life course. So we hope everyone will pitch in and do their part. It doesn't take too much. It's not very much time. And I have to say that for those of you who agree to speak with our fantastic genetic counselors on the phone, I think you'll actually get something from them too. The first step in this process may seem like the hardest sometime, but it's getting a copy of the genetic test report so that we can verify that you really do have a change in the CSNK2A1 gene. More than 95% of the time, that genetic report confirms for us what you've been thinking. But I will say some families have found it extremely useful because sometimes we find that that isn't the answer, but something else is. And we want to make sure you're on the right path and going on the way for the right journey for your condition. With that, if you don't have a copy yourself of that genetic test report, our genetic counselors are happy to take a copy of a medical release form for you and we'll do the work for you. We'll find that copy of the genetic test report and we'll even give you a copy back so you have it for your records. And then after that, the next parts are relatively straightforward. Part of it is speaking with a genetic counselor on our Simon Searchlight team, a genetic counselor who works with me at Columbia University, so that we can get to know your individual and your family member better, and we can make sure that that information is represented accurately by the researchers who will then use it. Your information is de-identified. That means no one knows who you are. No one knows where you live. No one knows your name. Your privacy is important to us, but it allows many, many researchers around the world to start working for you. By being in that research, you're represented and you can make sure that they include you or your family member in the studies that are done to better understand Okur-Chung neurodevelopmental syndrome. You're not alone. We already have 56 members within Simon Searchlight from the community, but we know there are far, far more than 56 individuals in the world with this condition. And so we want to be able to make sure everyone is included and no one is left behind. I have to say that that's becoming increasingly important as I and others try and think about treatments for the future that might be targeted at individual genetic variants. It therefore becomes critical to make sure your variant is represented in the research so that if we know that it's there, we can think about strategies to target it in the future. Those treatments won't necessarily be tomorrow. They may be a ways off, but again, because it takes time to plan for these things, we want to make sure you're included from the beginning as we do that. As a practicing geneticist, I always want to be able to make sure my patients get the very best care. But what is that care? How do I know what to do? As medical professionals, we develop something called a standard of care. We try and get information from our patients and be able to develop best practices. What do I, as an expert, recommend? We can then put together a document of recommendations with those best practices and use that to disseminate to individuals around the world so that their doctors can know what the doctors who know this condition recommend. That becomes incredibly important for your doctor to be able to know what I recommend, as well as for your insurance company, if you live in a country where we need to advocate for that, so that your insurance company knows that we recommend that as medical professionals for the care of your child. That also becomes important when we think about therapies. So, when we think about special education, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, even things like music therapy, aqua therapy, other things that might be beneficial, the more evidence we have, the more data we have to support those recommendations, the more likely those will be adopted. So again, we all need to pitch in, we need to do our part so that we can help you, so that we can come up with those best practices, those clinical care guidelines that hopefully will raise everyone's boat. Everyone can work together so that even without any new genetic therapies, any new medications, hopefully by following those best practices, we will all have better outcomes. Some of the things we ask you about are medical things. In particular, we ask about medications or treatments that your child might have used and whether or not it seems like they were helpful or potentially harmful. I'm really listening carefully to what you report back. And if you need to even write in text or give an explanation about what you're thinking or what you've seen, I want you to go into detail. And the reason why is I have to say that I was surprised when I heard from one family in an unexpected way about something they'd been doing with their child, a particular medication, and the very positive effect it seemed to have. So far, that's an N of one. That is, that's just one child where I've seen this, but I have been impressed at what a positive impact it had. And so I'm listening. I'm listening carefully to what you can tell in terms of whether or not you're observing anything that you have seen is helpful. As we start to see not just one, but two or even three individuals, it may be that we stumble upon something that could be really important in terms of improving behavior, learning, talking, walking, coordination, things that I'm very tempted to see that I've seen improve with some types of treatments. So I'm listening very carefully, and I hope that as we learn together, we may be able to use this information again to find medications that are already available, already safe, but may be able to improve our lives in the short term. As we're asking you to provide information, we're also asking information about what your child is like on a day-to-day basis, what their behaviors are like, and what their skills are like, what we sometimes call adaptive behavior. That may sound a little like a funny word, but what we're really trying to figure out is in their day to day life, what are they capable of doing? How independent can they be? What things can they do in terms of brushing their teeth or brushing their hair or being able to pour a glass of water? These are things that in everyday life are helpful and easy for you as a parent to be able to report on. Why do we bother with those things? Well, what we're doing is we're really preparing to know without a treatment, what are individuals' lives like on a day to day basis? What are they capable of doing? What's comfortable for them to do? And what are they developing the skills to do? That will give us a baseline for comparison so that as we get into a new treatment or a clinical trial, we have something to compare them to. So we can see if there's a change. We can see if there's improvement. This becomes incredibly important to have that baseline or knowing what life is normally like so that as we do get into treatment trials, hopefully we can have individuals serve as their own comparator. That is that for your child, for instance, we could see what they're like right now. And then if we start a treatment, we can see if things improve, if they get better, or conversely, if things get worse. By doing that and taking the time to do that now, it saves us time later so that just in case we do stumble upon or intentionally find a treatment and want to be able to consider how individuals are doing, we have that run-in period already. We know what their baseline is like. We don't have to take 2 years being able to figure that out. We are shovel ready to go in terms of new treatments or new trials when they are ready for us. So thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope this answers some of the questions you may have about how critical it is to participate in research in general and hopefully in Simon Searchlight specifically. I really, really want to make sure that you've got every chance to be represented, every chance to be able to be part of what I hope will be the long-term supports, the care until the cure, as we all march forward together, learn from each other, and make our lives richer.